A hopeless signal in the void. The XL Terran Empire had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Their ships were sleek, their technology advanced, and their power unmatched. But none of that mattered now. The Xipherion, a proud warship of the Empire, drifted helplessly in deep space. Its engines were dead, its power systems failing. The once bright control panels flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows across the metallic walls. The crew moved in silence, their smooth gray skin now dull from exhaustion. Their large black eyes, once full of confidence, now carried only fear. Commander Vecras stood on the bridge, gripping the control panel tightly. His sharp fingers tapped the screen, but the system refused to respond. He had been trained for battle, for strategy, for war. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this. Being stranded in the void, powerless, watching his crew slowly lose hope. "We have sent out a distress signal," Sub-Officer Xaltor reported, his voice tense. "But no one has responded." Vecras didn't look up. He already knew what the response would be. No one was coming. The XL Terran Empire was mighty, but it was not loved. Other species feared them, respected them, but they did not rush to save them. Their enemies saw this as an opportunity. One less warship, one less threat. Their so-called allies, they would turn away, pretending they never heard the signal. The Xipherion was alone, and time was running out. A failing ship, a fading hope. The ship's life support systems were breaking down. The air was getting thinner, colder. The power core, the heart of the ship, had suffered catastrophic damage after a surprise attack by rogue pirates. Though the Xipherion had managed to escape, the battle had left it crippled. The repair drones had failed. The automated systems could not compensate for the damage, and the crew. The crew was not trained for this. They were warriors, not engineers. They could operate a starship, they could fire weapons, they could execute battle maneuvers with precision. But fixing a broken power core, that was beyond them. Vecras turned toward the viewport, staring into the endless darkness of space. The stars stretched out before him, cold and indifferent. For the first time in his life, he felt small. "Commander," Xaltor spoke again, hesitating this time. "There is a ship approaching." Vecras spun around. "What ship?" Xaltor's fingers danced over the control panel, bringing up the data. A single blip appeared on the holographic screen. "Unknown vessel. Medium-sized. Not XL Terran." A ripple of unease spread across the bridge. If it was not one of theirs, then who was it? An enemy? A scavenger ship? Or worse, pirates, returning to finish the job? "Send a warning transmission," Vecras ordered. "If they come too close, we—" He stopped himself. "We will do what?" The Xipherians' weapons were offline. They had no shields, no functioning engines. If this unknown ship wanted to attack them, they wouldn't even be able to fight back. A sense of dread settled in his chest. "What species?" he asked. There was a pause. Xaltor hesitated, double-checking the readings. Then his voice came out slow and uncertain. "Human. A dangerous gamble." The bridge fell into dead silence. The crew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of confusion and disbelief. Humans. The name alone made them uneasy. The XL Terrans had heard stories about humans, strange creatures from a distant planet. They were not an old species, not an empire, not a dominant force in the galaxy. Yet they were feared. Humans had something the other species did not. They never gave up. Where other civilizations followed tradition, humans experimented. Where others waited for orders, humans took action. They built machines from scrap, modified technology without hesitation, and had a strange, reckless habit of fixing things in ways that defied logic. But that also made them dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. And now one of their ships was heading straight for the Xipherion. "Commander," Xaltor said carefully, "should we refuse their help?" Vecres stared at the approaching blip on the screen. If it were any other species, he wouldn't have hesitated to turn them away. But now, they had no other choice. Open communications, Vecres said at last. Let's see what these humans want. The unexpected rescuers. A static-filled voice crackled through the Zypharian speakers. This is Captain Ethan Cole of the U.S. Pathfinder. We received your distress signal. Do you require assistance? The crew of the Zypharian exchanged uneasy glances, a human ship offering help. It was hard to believe. Commander Vecres leaned forward, his sharp fingers gripping the console. His instincts screamed at him to refuse. The XL Terran Empire had always stood alone, proud and self-sufficient. Accepting help from another species, especially humans, felt like weakness. And yet, the ship was dying. His crew was dying. He tapped a control, activating the transmission. This is Commander Vecres of the Zypharian. We acknowledge your transmission, he said, keeping his voice steady. We have suffered catastrophic damage and require assistance. The last word felt like poison on his tongue. A pause. Then, Captain Cole's voice returned, casual, almost amused. Copy that, Commander. Sending over a repair team. Hold tight. The communication cut off. Vecres frowned. The humans were acting as if this was just another routine repair job. They cannot fix this ship, muttered Lieutenant Kilvek, his voice filled with doubt. Our technology is beyond them. We will let them try, Vecres said grimly, and we will watch them carefully. First contact. A few minutes later, the Zypharian's airlock hissed open. The human repair team stepped inside. They wore sturdy dark suits with glowing visors, their boots clanking against the metal floor. The XL Terran crew stiffened, their hands resting near their sidearms. The lead human removed his helmet, revealing short brown hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. He grinned. Wow, you guys really did a number on this thing, said Sarah Lawson, U.S. Pathfinder's chief engineer. She ran a gloved hand along the ship's walls, shaking her head. Looks fancy, but, structurally, a nightmare. The XL Terrans bristled. Had a human just insulted their ship? Kilvek narrowed his black eyes. This vessel is one of the finest in the XL Terran fleet. Sarah snorted. Then whoever designed it should be fired. Half your systems are redundant. Your cooling vents are in the worst possible place, and your power grid is a tangled mess. It's a miracle this thing even flies. A tense silence filled the corridor. Vecres studied the human engineer carefully. She wasn't mocking them. She was analyzing. She spoke with confidence, not arrogance, and that made him uneasy. Can you fix it? He asked, his voice careful. Sarah flashed a smirk. Give me access to your core systems, and I'll have this thing running better than before. The room tensed. Give a human access to their technology. The very idea was unthinkable. Vecres knew he was taking a risk, but what choice did he have? He exhaled slowly. Very well. You will have access, but under strict supervision. Sarah grinned. Works for me. Let's get to work. The human way. The human engineers moved fast. They did not hesitate, did not second-guess. They adapted. Where XL Terran engineers followed strict manuals, humans improvised. They bypassed damaged circuits, rerouted energy, reinforced failing supports, all without waiting for approval. Sarah knelt beside an open panel, her hands moving quickly over exposed wires. You guys use an energy loop system, right? Problem is, the loop is too rigid. It can't compensate for overloads. We'll add a manual override and increase flexibility. Zoltor blinked. That is not standard procedure. Sarah grinned. Yeah, that's why it works. Within minutes, the Zypharian's emergency lights flickered brighter. The air became less stale. A whisper spread through the XL Terran crew. The humans were fixing their ship. Vecres had seen many things in his time. He had fought in battles, conquered enemies, led missions across the stars. But nothing surprised him more than this. Humans were not only repairing the Zypharian, they were making it better. And for the first time, he wondered, had the XL Terran Empire underestimated humanity? This ship is falling apart. The Zypharian's main engineering bay was a chaotic mess of flickering consoles, exposed wiring, and overheating circuits. The hum of the failing power core echoed through the walls, a constant reminder that time was running out. Sarah Lawson stood in the middle of it all, hands on her hips, shaking her head in disbelief. This ship is a disaster waiting to happen. Commander Vekris, standing stiffly nearby, narrowed his black eyes. The Zypharian is a masterpiece of XL Terran engineering. Sarah raised an eyebrow and kicked a loose power conduit. Sparks flew. Sure, she said, smirking. If by masterpiece you mean overcomplicated, inefficient, and one system's failure away from total meltdown. A few of the XL Terran engineers bristled, but Vekras held up a hand, silencing them. He was not a fool. The humans had already proven their skills. Arguing would be pointless. Instead, he simply crossed his arms. Can you fix it? Sarah grinned. Oh, we can do more than fix it. We can make it work properly. A new way of thinking. Sarah and her team moved fast, working with an energy that the XL Terrans had never seen before. The humans ripped out faulty relays, bypassed damaged circuits, and rewired entire power grids. But what shocked that XL Terrans the most was how they did it. Where XL Terran engineers followed rigid manuals and procedures, the humans simply figured things out on the fly. Your ship's power core is overheating because it's designed with zero fail-safes, Sarah explained, welding a metal plate into place. A single failure in the cooling system, and boom, meltdown. Kilvek, the senior XL Terran engineer, frowned. Our systems are designed for maximum efficiency. Sarah rolled her eyes. Efficiency. Your designers sacrificed safety for efficiency. That's why you're in this mess. Kilvek opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Because she was right. The Zypharian had been built to be advanced, not practical. The humans saw the flaws immediately, flaws that XL Terrans had never questioned. And now, Sarah and her team were fixing in hours what the XL Terrans had struggled with for days. A critical discovery. Just as the humans were making progress, a warning klaxon blared across the engineering bay. Vekris turned sharply. What now? One of the XL Terran engineers checked the console. His face paled. The power core temperature is rising. Fast. Sarah sprinted to the control panel and scanned the readings. Oh, that's not good. Vekris moved beside her. Explain. Sarah exhaled sharply. Your power core has a built-in overload limiter, right? Yes. Well, it's failing. If we don't shut it down in the next 5 minutes, this entire ship is going to turn into a miniature sun. The room fell silent. The Zypharian was on the verge of total destruction. The human solution. Kilvek shook his head. We have procedures for this. We can reroute energy through the secondary conduits. There's no time. Sarah cut him off. We need to manually vent the heat buildup now. Vekras frowned. That is impossible. Our systems are automated. If they fail, there is no manual override. Sarah sighed. Yeah, that's the problem. No backup, no redundancy, no what if things go wrong plan. That's not how humans build things. She turned to her team. All right, we're doing this the human way. We make our own override. Vekras stiffened. You will modify our ship's systems. Sarah grinned. Unless you want to explode, yeah. Vekras hesitated. Letting humans modify XL Terran technology, that was unthinkable. But so was dying. He clenched his jaw. Do it. A race against time. The humans sprang into action. Sarah's team grabbed spare power conduits, repurposed coolant pipes, and emergency venting controls. They didn't have time to build a proper override, so they did what humans did best. They improvised. "We reroute excess heat through the emergency exhaust vents," Sarah explained. "But they're not designed for this, so we'll have to manually regulate it." Vecras frowned. "That means someone will have to stay here and control it by hand." Sarah gave him a tight smile. "Yeah, and if we mess up, we all die." Kilvek's eyes widened. "This is madness." Sarah smirked. "No, it's engineering." She pulled the lever. The ship trembled. Warning lights flashed as the emergency vents opened. A deep rumble vibrated through the Zypharian as superheated plasma rushed out into space. The temperature gauge dropped. The power core stabilized. Sarah let out a breath. That was close. Vecras stared at the readouts. The Zypharian was still operational. For the first time, he looked at the humans with something he never expected. Respect. A new perspective. The crisis had been averted. But more importantly, something had changed. The XL Terran crew no longer looked at the humans with distrust. They watched them with curiosity. The humans had not followed procedures. They had not relied on automated systems. They had adapted. Vecras turned to Sarah, studying her carefully. "You saved this ship." Sarah wiped grease from her forehead. "Yeah, that's kind of our thing." Vecras exhaled. The Zypharian had once been a symbol of XL Terran superiority. Now, it had only survived because of human ingenuity. And for the first time in his life, Commander Vecras wondered, had humans surpassed them? The XL Terran's dilemma. The Zypharian was alive again. Power hummed steadily through the ship's veins, the lights no longer flickering. The core, once a ticking bomb, was now stable, thanks to the humans. Yet, despite their success, the atmosphere on the bridge was tense. Commander Vecras stood in silence, his sharp eyes locked on the main display. His ship had survived, but at what cost? The humans had done the impossible. They had modified XL Terran technology, broken safety protocols, and improvised in ways that no XL Terran engineer would have dared. And it had worked. But that was the problem. If humans could fix the Zypharian so easily, what did that mean for the XL Terran Empire? Trust or control? Lieutenant Kilvek, still uneasy, stepped closer. "Commander, we should resume full control of the ship. The humans have done their part." A few of the crew nodded. The idea of allowing outsiders, humans, to have access to their ship's core systems was still unthinkable. Vecras understood their fear. The XL Terran Empire was built on control, on the belief that their technology, their ways, were superior. And yet here they were, surviving only because humans had done what they could not. He turned to Sarah Lawson, who stood casually near the main control panel, arms crossed, watching him with an unreadable expression. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't arrogant. She was waiting. "You made significant modifications to our systems," Vecras finally said. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, you're welcome." Kilvek bristled. "You tampered with classified technology." Sarah scoffed. "Tampered? Your ship was about to explode, and we saved your hides. Call it whatever you want, but let's be honest. If we hadn't been here, you'd be space dust." A heavy silence followed, because she was right. The hard truth. Vecras took a slow breath. "I do not like this situation," he admitted. "The XL Terran Empire prides itself on self-reliance, on superiority. But today we relied on you." Sarah shrugged. "Look, I get it. No one likes admitting they need help. But here's the thing. You're still alive. Your crew is still alive. And we're not asking for anything in return." That, more than anything, unsettled the XL Terrans. Most species in the galaxy worked on transactions, debts, and power dynamics. If a XL Terran ship had rescued another, they would expect a favor in return. An alliance, tribute, something. Humans expected nothing. It was illogical. "You don't want technology from us?" Kyle Vec asked, suspicion in his voice. "No favors." Sarah laughed. "Nah. We just don't like watching people die when we can do something about it." Vecres narrowed his eyes. "So this was charity." Sarah gave him a lazy smirk. "Call it whatever you want. We call it doing the right thing. A choice that changes everything." Vecres exhaled. His crew was waiting for his decision. He could feel the tension, the fear of losing control. But what was control worth if it led to failure? The XL Terrans had followed the same principles for centuries. They had believed their systems, their engineers, their way of thinking was the best in the galaxy. And yet, one human repair team had just proven them wrong. Vecres looked at the control panels, now functioning better than ever. The human fixes had improved their ship, not just repaired it. He finally spoke. "You will remain on board, for now." Kelvec stiffened. "Commander." Vecres held up a hand. "We have seen what humans are capable of. Denying it would be foolish." He turned to Sarah. "We will continue to observe your methods. There is much to learn." Sarah grinned. "Now that's progress." The decision had been made. And in that moment, Vecres knew that nothing would ever be the same for the XL Terran Empire. Because for the first time in their history, they had witnessed something greater than their own technology. Human ingenuity. A race against time. The Zypharian shuddered violently as another warning klaxon blared through the corridors. "Warning. Power core stability at 40%. Coolant pressure dropping." Sarah Lawson cursed under her breath. "Are you kidding me? We just stabilized this thing." Commander Vecres turned sharply to his engineers. "Report." Kilvec's fingers flew across the control panel. His voice was tight with urgency. "The repairs have held, but the core is still unstable. The system is compensating for our modifications, but it wasn't designed for this level of flexibility." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Your core wasn't built to handle emergency adjustments. It's fighting us." Vecres clenched his jaw. He could feel the tension thick in the air. His crew was waiting for orders. But for the first time, he didn't have a solution. The humans did. He turned to Sarah. "Options." Sarah didn't hesitate. "We need to shut down the core and reboot it manually. We can force a recalibration before it collapses completely." Kilvec's eyes widened in horror. "You cannot be serious. A full shutdown? That is madness. The Zypharian has never been powered down since its construction. If we lose core function completely, we may never restart it." Sarah exhaled sharply, clearly running out of patience. "Yeah, well, if we don't do it, your ship's gonna implode in about 10 minutes. Vecres considered the risk. To shut down the core was unthinkable. Fidel Terran technology was built to operate continuously, with no manual resets. And yet, every alternative led to destruction. He made his choice. "Do it," he ordered. "Cutting the power." Sarah didn't waste a second. "All right, team, you know the drill. We pull the main stabilizer, flush the core pressure, and bring it back online before the system locks us out." Her crew moved instantly, while the XL Terrans hesitated. The humans were too calm, as if they had done this before. Vecres watched as Sarah grabbed the main override switch and looked at him. "Last chance to back out," she said. Vecres narrowed his eyes. "Proceed." Sarah pulled the switch. The ship went dark. The abyss of silence. For the first time in its history, the Zypharian was completely powerless. The hum of the engines disappeared. The steady pulse of energy that had always existed vanished. It was as if the ship itself had died. The crew stood frozen, their dark eyes reflecting the emergency lights flickering weakly in the corridors. Never before had they experienced total silence aboard a XL Terran vessel. Some of them gripped their consoles, as if afraid the floor might give way beneath them. Kilvec's voice was barely above a whisper. "If this does not work." Vecres didn't answer. because he knew the truth. If this didn't work, the Zypharian would never fly again. Restarting the heart, Sarah and her team moved like clockwork. She pulled up a holoscreen, her fingers dancing over unfamiliar Terran commands. Okay, your system is fighting me. It doesn't want to restart manually. It's looking for an automatic sequence that doesn't exist anymore. She frowned, then turned to Galactic. How fast can you override the ship's security protocols? Galactic hesitated. That would take days. The systems are interlocked at every level. Sarah cracked her knuckles. Cool. I'll do it in 3 minutes. Galactic's jaw dropped. Impossible. But Sarah was already rewriting the command code. Her team worked in sync, rerouting energy lines, bypassing Terran restrictions that had been designed to prevent exactly this type of interference. The humans weren't just fixing the ship, they were bending it to their will. Vecras watched in fascination. His people would have debated this for hours, afraid to break procedure. Humans. They acted. Core stabilizer is responding, one of Sarah's engineers called out. Reinitializing fuel injection. Another added. Sarah grinned, bringing the beast back to life in 3, 2, 1. She hit the final command. For a second, nothing. Then, a deep, resonating hum filled the ship. Lights blazed to full power. The core readings stabilized. The Zypharian was alive again. A collective breath was released across the bridge. Some of the Terrans exchanged looks of pure disbelief. Sarah leaned back against a console, arms crossed. Told you it'd work. A moment of realization. Vecres exhaled. His ship was no longer failing. It was stronger than before. The truth settled deep into his mind. Terran engineers would have never attempted this. Without the humans, the Zypharian would have been lost. Sarah dusted off her hands. All right, crisis averted. Anything else you need fixed while we're here? Her casual confidence sent a ripple of unease through the Terran crew. They had always viewed humans as reckless, inefficient, inferior. But now they were grappling with a terrifying realization. Humans weren't just lucky. They were better. Vecras met Sarah's gaze. I underestimated you. Sarah smirked. Yeah, you wouldn't be the first. For the first time, Vecras felt something unusual. Not fear, not distrust, but admiration. Because today the Terrans had learned something new. In the cold void of space, where no plan survives contact with reality, there is no greater force than human ingenuity. Her crew moved instantly, while the Terrans hesitated. The humans were too calm, as if they had done this before. Vecras watched as Sarah grabbed the main override switch and looked at him. Last chance to back out, she said. Vecras narrowed his eyes. Proceed. Sarah pulled the switch. The ship went dark. The abyss of silence. For the first time in its history, the Zypharian was completely powerless. The hum of the engines disappeared. The steady pulse of energy that had always existed vanished. It was as if the ship itself had died. The crew stood frozen, their dark eyes reflecting the emergency lights flickering weakly in the corridors. Never before had they experienced total silence aboard a Terran vessel. Some of them gripped their consoles, as if afraid the floor might give way beneath them. Galactic's voice was barely above a whisper. If this does not work. Vecras didn't answer. Because he knew the truth. If this didn't work, the Zypharian would never fly again. Restarting the heart, Sarah and her team moved like clockwork. She pulled up a holoscreen, her fingers dancing over unfamiliar Terran commands. Okay, your system is fighting me. It doesn't want to restart manually. It's looking for an automatic sequence that doesn't exist anymore. She frowned, then turned to Galactic. How fast can you override the ship's security protocols? More than just repairs. The Zypharian hummed with new energy, its systems more stable than ever before. The power core no longer threatened to implode, the cooling vents worked efficiently, and the once-failing life support now ran better than it ever had. But the XL Terran crew wasn't celebrating. They were staring, watching as the humans continued to work, not just fixing their ship, but improving it. An uncomfortable truth. Commander Vekraz observed the human engineers with silent unease. They weren't just making temporary repairs, they were rewiring entire systems, optimizing energy flow, reinforcing structural weaknesses, and they were doing it with ease. Lieutenant Kilvek stood beside him, his voice low. They are changing our ship, modifying cell Terran technology as if it were primitive. Vekraz didn't respond immediately, because deep down, he knew the truth. To humans, it was. He had spent his life believing the XL Terran Empire's engineering was the pinnacle of galactic design. And yet, Sarah and her team had picked apart its flaws in minutes. That realization was unsettling. If humans could do this to their technology so easily, what else could they do? A different way of thinking. Sarah wiped her forehead, stepping back from an exposed panel. All right, that should stop your energy bleed for good. Your old circuits were way too rigid. Now, the system will adapt instead of failing outright. One of the XL Terran engineers frowned. Adapt? Technology does not adapt. It follows precise design. Sarah smirked. Yeah, that's your problem. You design things to work in perfect conditions. We design things to survive no matter what. Vekraz listened carefully. Humans approached engineering the same way they approached everything else, not with strict rules, but with constant evolution. Where the XL Terrans built things to function only as intended, humans built things that could work even when everything went wrong. And that made them dangerous. A hard lesson. Kilvek finally spoke up. Our designs have lasted for centuries. The XL Terran way has served us well. Sarah chuckled, shaking her head. Has it? Because, from where I'm standing, your ship was one system failure away from becoming a floating graveyard. The words hit harder than any weapon blast. Some of the XL Terrans bristled at the insult, but Vekraz didn't move. Because again, she was right. He had spent his career believing in the superiority of his people. But superiority meant nothing if it crumbled under pressure. And right now, as he looked at the fully operational Zypharian, he knew one thing. Humans had just saved them, not because they followed rules, but because they refused to accept failure. And that was something the XL Terrans had never been prepared for. More than just a ship. Sarah dusted off her hands. All right, that's the last major issue sorted. Your ship should run smoother than ever. Kilvek scowled. You altered too much. The ship will not operate as it once did. Sarah grinned. Yeah, it'll run better. You're welcome. Vekraz exhaled. His ship was no longer just a XL Terran vessel. It had been changed, shaped by human hands, human thinking. And it was better for it. But that wasn't the part that unsettled him the most. The part that truly shook him. He wasn't sure if he wanted to go back to the old way. For the first time in his life, he questioned if the XL Terran Empire's technological superiority had ever been real, or if they had simply been too proud to see their own weaknesses. A new understanding. Sarah looked at him expectantly. So, Commander, what do you think? Vekraz met her gaze. He had spent the last few hours watching humans rewrite everything he thought he knew about engineering. Now he faced a choice. He could pretend nothing had changed, go back to the old ways, ignore what he had seen. Or he could accept reality. Vekraz straightened. The Zypharian is operational, stronger than before. Sarah's smirk widened. Told you. Vekraz ignored the comment. Humans are unlike any species we have encountered. Sarah shrugged. Yeah, we get that a lot. Vekraz studied her for a long moment. Then, finally, he gave a slow nod. Perhaps we have much to learn from you. Sarah's eyes gleamed. Now you're getting it. A new understanding. The Zypharian was no longer the ship it had been before. It still looked the same, sleek, dark metal with the emblem of the XL Terran Empire etched into its hull. But beneath the surface, something fundamental had changed. Its systems were stronger. Its engines ran smoother. The power core operated more efficiently. And the reason for all of it? Humans. Commander Vekras stood on the bridge, his dark eyes scanning the screens. For the first time in hours, there were no warnings flashing across the consoles. No signs of failure. The Zypharian had not just been repaired. It had been perfected, and that realization made him uneasy. Departing, but not forgotten. Sarah Lawson leaned casually against a console, watching the XL Terran crew with an amused expression. "Well, Commander, looks like our work here is done." Vekras turned to face her, arms clasped behind his back. His posture remained formal, controlled, but the way he looked at her had changed. Before, he had seen her as a reckless, unpredictable human, one of a species that the XL Terran Empire had never truly considered a major power. Now, he saw her as something more dangerous, not because she was a threat, but because she had changed his perspective. "You have done more than just repair this vessel," Vekras admitted. "You have shown us an alternative way of thinking." Sarah smirked. "Yeah, that tends to happen when humans get involved." She turned to her team. "All right, let's pack up. Time to head back to the Pathfinder." Vekras watched as the human engineers gathered their tools, their faces relaxed, as if this entire situation had been just another routine job for them. And that was what unsettled him the most. The impossible was routine for humans, a lesson in humility. As the human team prepared to depart, Lieutenant Kilvek approached Vekras cautiously. His voice was quiet. "Commander, what do we tell High Command?" Vekras didn't answer immediately. The XL Terran Empire prided itself on strength, independence, and superiority. Their doctrine dictated that they stood above the lesser species of the galaxy. And yet today, their survival had depended entirely on a species that should have been beneath them. If High Command learned that a single human repair crew had outperformed an entire XL Terran warship's engineering team, there would be questions. Vekras could lie. He could bury the truth, claim the ship had suffered minimal damage, and that the repairs had been handled internally. But deep down, he knew one thing. Hiding from the truth didn't make it any less real. And the truth was this: humans were different. Humans were dangerous. But not because of their weapons or their numbers. Because of their minds. Vekras turned to Kilvek, his voice calm but firm. "We will tell them the truth." Kilvek hesitated. "The Empire will not like that." Vekras gave a rare, almost imperceptible smile. "Then they will have to adapt." Parting words. Sarah and her team stood at the airlock, ready to board their shuttle. She glanced at Vekras one last time. "So, what now, Commander?" Vekras exhaled slowly. For the first time in his career, he did not know the answer. He looked at Sarah, at the humans who had reshaped his ship and his understanding of the universe. And he realized that the XL Terran Empire had spent too long underestimating this species. "Now," Vekras said finally, "we will rethink what we know about your kind." Sarah's grin widened. "Good, because if there's one thing we humans are good at." She stepped into the shuttle and gave a mock salute. "It's proving people wrong." With that, the airlock hissed shut. Moments later, the human shuttle launched from the Zypharian, disappearing into the void. Vekras watched until it was gone. For the first time in his life, he felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity. The humans had left, but they had also left something behind. A lesson. And Vekras suspected it was only the beginning.